Okay, good morning everybody. It is Wednesday 24th of November 2021. Welcome to Norwich City Council's Licensing Subcommittee. One main item on the agenda today is an application for grant of a premises licence for goat farmers, and that is in Orford Yard in Norwich. Okay, so we'll start with introductions. My name is Ian Student. I'm your chair for the day. We've got Councillor Caroline Ackroyd to my left, Councillor Martin Schmierer to my right, Sarah Moss, who is our legal advisor from NP Law, and we've got Maxine from the licensing department, and Leonie, who's helping us with the tech today. So welcome to everybody. We'll hear from Maxine in a moment. Who'll introduce the report, and then we'll hear from the applicant and the objector, and we'll ask some questions as well. So, first of all, we have apologies, and there are none, and declarations of interest. Again, there are none. So, moving on to item 3, and that is application for grant of a premises licence, Goat Farmers, Pivotal House, Studio 1B, 4 Orford Yard, Red Line Street, Norwich. Okay, and over to Maxine to introduce the report, please.
Members are asked, in accordance with the delegation of licensing functions contained in the Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy, Licensing Act 2003, to consider the application for the grant of the premises licence in respect of Goat Farmers, Pivotal House, Studio 1B, 4 Orford Yard, Red Line Street, Norwich, NR1 3TB, following the receipt of relevant representation. It's recommended that members determine the application to grant the premises licence in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and Norwich City Council Statement of Licensing Policy. A new policy is being drafted, and the committee will hear this at the end of November. The applicant is Goat Farmers Limited. The proposed DPS is George Santos. The application seeks to allow the licensable activities, times and opening hours as set out in the application form, which is attached to Appendix A. This also includes the steps proposed to promote the licensing objectives, which is the operating schedule. The agent has confirmed that his client has agreed to withdraw the application for regulated entertainment, meaning no music, as defined in the Live Music Act, will be provided beyond 2,300 hours. Relevant representation was received from the police. The applicant has agreed to the police condition, and a copy of this is attached to Appendix B. No other representation was received from the responsible authorities. Representation objecting to the application has been received from one local resident. A copy of this has been attached to Appendix C. Attached to Appendix D is a location plan. Attached to Appendix E are the elements of the City Council's local licensing policy, which are considered to have a bearing upon the application. Attached to Appendix F are the elements of the national guidance issued by the Secretary of State that are considered to have a bearing upon the application. In summary, in determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, the subcommittee must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, that is to say the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and protection of children from harm. The representations, including supporting information presented by all the parties, the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, national guidance, and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. The subcommittee must take such of the following steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To grant the application as asked, modify the conditions of the licence by altering or omitting or adding to them, reject the whole or part of the application, refuse to accept the proposed DPS. The subcommittee is asked to note that it may not modify the conditions or reject the whole or part of the application merely because it considers it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. The representation received appears to relate to issues that fall under the licensing objectives. The subcommittee is directed to paragraphs 20 and 24 of the local licensing policy at Appendix E, which contain examples of factors that impact on the licensing objectives that the applicant could consider when addressing these issues. These paragraphs also contain examples of controlled measures that may be taken into account in operating schedules having regard of the type of premises or the licensable activities. The subcommittee is also reminded of the contents of appendices 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the local licensing policy, not reproduced in this report, which contain calls of model conditions relating to the 4 licensing objectives.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we welcome the applicants, George Santos, and your agents, and that is Stuart Gibson. Stuart, will you be talking on behalf of the applicant? Okay, thank you. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves and the business and tell us about your proposal, please.
Good morning, thank you. As said, my name is Stuart Gibson, the licence agent who will be presenting the application on behalf of Go Finance this morning. As you've heard, this is an application for a new premises licence, and it's to do with a very small restaurant which is seeking to offer the sale of alcohol by retail for customers who order food. No alcohol will be available unless you sit down and have something to eat. The space that they operate is a shared space with a coffee shop in the same building. Seating will be available, as I said, in a communal food court area, and it's around about 40 covers in total that they would have in the premises. The original application, as you've heard, we requested a terminal hour of 23:30 for the sale of alcohol, late night refreshment and regulated entertainment. This was purely, the regulated entertainment part was purely to allow the flexibility, perhaps for the business to offer the venue for hire in the future if the demand dictated. It was just a thought of in the future we could maybe have small company gatherings that may want to take a venue for themselves and provide whatever type of, I guess, function for their people that they desire. It was easier to have that granted on the original licence than come before you every time with a temporary event, which obviously just the police and environmental health could comment on. And we just felt that could be put on the licence to allow that kind of flexibility. There's no intention, or was no intention, and certainly is no intention at present for the business model to use those late hours on a normal day-to-day business. It's a daytime, early evening business, and currently the business closes between 6 and 8 p.m. That's the current normal day-to-day hours that they operate. Now, what we have, sorry, I'll come back to that. The mood that they're looking to create would be a casual laid-back dining experience, enhanced by background music, which is played through Google speakers, Google domestic speakers. It's just to have that kind of ambience in the premises. Now, I have in my submissions that you've had last week stated there was no responsible authority representations. I did hear this morning that said the police had made a representation. I don't take it as a rep. The police officer contacted me and just wanted to know how the CCTV was going to operate given it was controlled by the landlord, which we gave her assurances. I said, yeah, that's available as it would be any other time. And she came back and said, yeah, I'm very happy as long as you put recording for 28 days and the police can see it on request. That was the extent of the police rep. It wasn't a rep as such, it was just a clarification. No other responsible authority made any comment on the application, and there was no request other than please just put 28 days on the CCTV to have additional conditions added to the original application. We did, as you're well aware, and the reason we're here today, we had one interested party representation to the application. And the original concern was that regarding late night loud music, the feeling of the type of premises that is operational, that late night loud music would not be appropriate for the surrounding area. Now, to the great credit, the applicant listened to those concerns and agreed to withdraw the entertainment side of the business, as you've heard. So regulated entertainment is no longer required on the licence. Now, the main areas of objections come back to 4 key areas. So this was put to the objector, who decided no, he still wanted to keep his application of objection going. There was no reason to withdraw it, but the concerns were around live and recorded music inappropriate due to the location and design of the premises. Well, as I've said, we've withdrawn the entertainment side of things. They will no longer offer the venue for hire. Music will be of a background nature only, as I've said, via Google domestic speakers in the business, just to give you that mood, if you like, the ambience of what they're trying to create for the restaurant. And as you're well aware, Chair, background music has no definition in the licensing act. It's not part of it mentioned in regulated entertainment. And there are relevant conditions on page 6 and page 7 of my submissions that I will just mention that we have already submitted as responsible conditions in terms of noise, in so much as noise or vibration from the premises will be maintained at a level that will not be audible at the facade of any neighbouring noise-sensitive premises, and we have clear notices advising customers to leave the premises area in a quiet and orderly manner. Now, if you go back to what I said a few minutes ago, that will, in the main, be between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. in the evening. It's still very early in the evening. Most of the evening venues have not even got going by that time. The second one was a concern to me because the objective was wanting no live or recorded music at any time. As I've said, they need the background music. Now, whether it's a matter for themselves, whether you would take background music as recorded music, I have come across some committees that do. I have said to your licensing officer through the application process, I don't believe that to be the case. I think background music is something that is just there as an ambience and shouldn't be included in that, but we would want background music, and that is it. We're not looking to have DJs, not looking to have live music. There's none of that going to take place in the business, and that can be conditioned quite happily to ensure that is the case. He also has a concern that there would be a congregation of customers in Orford Yard with drinks. Well, that's not going to happen. 2 reasons. Alcohol is only served with food, so you're not going to have a bar-style atmosphere where 30, 40, 50, 100 people stood out in the yard back to back with a drink in their hand. It's not going to happen. Everybody who is visiting the premises will be seated. It says so in the conditions being offered, seating for all customers. So it is not going to happen. The only time you're going to have people outside is perhaps for people who wish to step outside and smoke in the yard, of which, if you had capacity for both venues at its highest, you would have 40 people sat inside. So the amount of people that are going to be outside at any one time smoking is going to be minimal. And finally, the objector is concerned about new owners perhaps taking over the business and therefore changing the business model. All very well saying to Mr. Santos, this is your business model, thank you very much, we agree to that. And then somebody else comes in 2 years later and says, no, rip that up, we want to run a totally different business. Well, as you will see from the application and the conditions offered, there are sufficient conditions offered in this current application that would mean if this license was transferred to any other individual or business and they wanted to operate a different business model, they would have to come back before you through a variation process to have conditions removed. Otherwise, they'd be trading illegally and couldn't operate the business in any other way than hopefully it would be granted today. The conditions ensure the business will be run as we are saying going forward this morning. With that, Chair, I would ask that, yes, the application has been amended from its original form in so much as regulated entertainment has been removed, so it is an amended application. It is not an alcohol-led business, it's a food-led business, and alcohol is ancillary to food. You must have food before you can have a drink. And given that it isn't alcohol-led, it is a small venue with a maximum of 40 covers, which includes those who are visiting the coffee shop and not this venue. I would ask that you grant this application as amended. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have for us. Mr. Santos would answer any direct questions to the business as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll start with questions from committee members. Who would like to start? Yeah, Councillor Ackroyd, please.
Thank you. You said just now, you quoted from page 20, where you said that noise or vibration from the premises will be maintained at a level that will not be audible Now, I just wondered how you would do that, just to explain us how you would, because obviously, if you've got background music, you can do it. You just turn the music down, presumably. I wondered, you know, if you've got 40 people, there will be noise from them, and how you would set about making sure that noise didn't transmit to other buildings around. Thank you.
Okay. First and foremost, if you had 40 people, then you're full. And as I said, it's a shared space with the coffee shop, so people using Kobe Furnace, 25, 30 maximum, if that is the case. Given that this would be granted as a condition on the licence, both Mr. Santos and the staff would be well aware that that is what they have to adhere to. So if you did have, as you quite rightly say, if the music needed to be adjusted, and the music would be set at a level where that would be tested in advance. This look, is this what level of music volume can we have so to ensure the noise doesn't transmit? So that's what the music is not one I'm too concerned about. If you had, I doubt it very much, but if you had a group of people who, let's say, were a little bit more rowdy than they should be, then the staff would intervene very quickly and ask them to keep the noise down. If they were refusing to do that, I'm sure Mr. Santos would take the view to ask them to politely leave the premises. It's something he would have to do because this is something we've offered as a condition on the licence, and he knows he is unable to break conditions of his licence. Mr. Santos is an experienced licensee. He runs the business opposite, next door, actually, a couple of yards away, his restaurant, and has done, I think, for the last 3 years in Norwich. So he's an experienced licensee, and has over 20 years' experience in the hospitality industry. So he's not new to the game. He knows how businesses need to operate. He knows that he has to adhere to the conditions, the rules of the licence. And basically, in short, a long-winded answer, but in short, the individual customers on an individual evening would be policed by the staff if there was, in their view, rowdy of a persistent nature. Now, somebody may loudly laugh for 10 seconds, we're not talking about that, but if it was a persistent noise, they would obviously ask them to keep the noise down. It's not the type of venue. But it's not the type of venue they're trying to create. As I said, it's a laid-back down experience. Their customer profile is anything between 40 and 70 years old, so we're not talking about the kind of young, rowdy people who will be in the pubs around the city. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, please.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just clarify that a little bit further? It seems to me that that particular condition wouldn't in practice be enforceable. We're talking about noise or vibration not being audible at the facade. So in practice that might mean that if somebody in a neighbouring flat opened a window and there was a clink of a glass or something like that, then you've automatically then breached that condition. So what I'm wondering is, does your client intend it to be more that the noise and vibration process will be maintained at a level that would not be a nuisance to any resident at the facade of the building rather than audible, just for clarification purposes?
Thank you. I fully understand your comment, and I think that's a more sensible approach to take. You would ask if you were to grant the licence, the condition be amended to reflect what Sarah has said.
Okay, thank you. Any further clarification on that particular condition?
Yes, I would actually. The noise and vibration, so if we're talking about music, if that was background music, then as you say, I would take the view that providing that's incidental music and it's not disrupting the main activity, which is eating, that it wouldn't actually require a licence. So in that term, in that sense, that condition wouldn't actually bite because you can't condition something that's not licensable. And as well, for music that's going on between 8 and 11 at night, that again doesn't require a licence. So again, that condition wouldn't bite. So are we talking then about noise or vibration that's unrelated to music?
We would be, as my submissions all the way through the 28-day process was before 11 o'clock. It's not conditioned because it's not licensable, but it was still felt that there was a case to answer today. So I would agree with that. So we are really talking about noise of, I guess, of human beings in the premises. And as I've said, the type of customer they attract The hours in the main when they trade, on the odd occasion if they did trade later if business demanded, it would still be that type of customer, it would still be the laid back dining experience, and therefore the individuals would be controlled by the staff in terms of potentially any noise they were creating or the staff felt they were creating that may cause a problem to neighbouring properties.
Thank you. Could I then just clarify the condition as being offered by your client? So, for instance, the wording, I would say, is noise or vibration unrelated to live or recorded music from the premises will be maintained at a level that will not be a nuisance at the facade of any neighbouring noise-sensitive premises.
Happy to accept that.
Thank you. Could I just explain for the objector's benefit that these are just things that we are clarifying the intentions of the applicant, because these things that appear in the operating schedule were the licence to be granted, which obviously hasn't been determined by the committee, but if they were, they would form part of the licence, so it's just really important that we clarify it, but it doesn't mean that it's been granted at this particular point. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schmidt, do you have any guide questions at the moment? I'd just like to talk about the plan that we have. We all have a copy of that. And the marking is in red. As I understand it, will be the licensable area. Can you just confirm that for me, please? Mr. Backhouse, do you have a copy of the map? Yeah, so for the benefit of members of the public, we have a plan in front of us, and drawn on that plan is the licensable area marked in red. Can you confirm that that is the licensable area, please?
Indeed, that is. It looks a little bit out of proportion in Orford Yard and as big as that. It's to allow, it's a smaller, narrower area, having been there this morning, to allow in the summertime to have tables perhaps outside, so people may make use of outside, and also to the effect of who knows where we're going to be this time next year. This thing hasn't gone away, and it may be we're back to just outside catering for a period of time, who knows, but there may be sort of coronavirus rules that would deal with that. The section numbered 5 is in fact the inside seating area. The Gobifanis part is withdrawn to the rear, and the area in front of that, to the right hand side in front of the lift, is where the coffee shop actually operates from. But that would be the licensable area, yes.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, the line that is drawn between the wording Orford Yard and number 5, that is the line that marks the building line. Is that correct?
It is.
Yeah.
The building lines. And the line that in between that, so if you see the number 5 and then there's a round dot and then there's a line in dark, that is the glass frontage of the premises.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions on the plan?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we'll turn to the conditions now, the conditions offered in your schedule. And starting with all 4 licensing objectives, listed a number of conditions here, including training to staff. Who will be providing that training?
Mr. Santos will provide the training. As I said, he's an experienced DPS and running the restaurant opposite, and will be able to provide training for all his staff.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to crime and disorder, CCTV, you've accepted the condition that has been recommended by the police?
Yes, we did. The only reason the police questioned that and phoned me up to ask it was just the CCTV, being a shared space, is controlled by the landlord. And she just wanted assurances the landlord would be happy to cooperate as any licensee would do in that, and we've assured that that would be the case.
Officially, it is a police representation. It doesn't count as an objection because you've accepted that.
Fully understand.
So, yeah. Okay. Thank you. In the final section on public nuisance, and we'll hear from Mr. Backhouse in a moment about his concerns about noise, but ultimately this application centres around Norwich, and the potential for public nuisance as well. So, referring to the conditions about sealed and open vessels, Sarah, I think you might seek some clarification on that, please.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, it currently reads that no persons carrying open or sealed vessels containing alcohol must be admitted to the premises at any time. Again, this goes back to a possibility in that it occurred to me that would then prevent people just making deliveries of alcohol to the premises. So I'm sure that wouldn't be your intention. Would it be more accurate to say that no customers carrying open or sealed vessels containing alcohol must be admitted to the premises at any time?
Thank you. And certainly it was not intended to include deliveries, but you then have the issue, I didn't think of this at the time, you do have the issue then of saying customers. Well, if somebody's come from another pub on their way bringing a glass, which maybe they shouldn't have done from another pub, but are wandering towards this premises, they're not yet a customer, are they? Define a customer is somebody who's actually paid money to receive the service. So somebody trying to come in with, the intention of the condition was to prevent anyone trying to enter the premises already with an open container in their hand.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to change the wording of that condition to allow deliveries?
Yes, please, if we could.
Okay. Would you like to offer some wording, or perhaps I could suggest some to make sure you're agreeable?
Happy to let you suggest, Sarah.
Okay. How about something along the lines of no persons carrying open or sealed vessels containing alcohol, with the exception of those persons delivering alcohol supplies to the premises for sale by retail, will be admitted to the premises at any time. Something along those lines.
Happy to accept that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. And the following condition, there is perhaps an issue with that as well. No persons must be permitted to remove open vessels containing alcohol for the premises. You've applied for on sales only, so that would presumably also apply to unopened vessels.
Yes, indeed. Once again, we haven't applied for off sales, so we're actually stating something that isn't in the application. But I'm happy to add it. It was purely to say the example I've just given, where somebody wanders in from another pub with a glass, they can't wander off with the drinks from the premises. And that was really to prevent that taking place. But if you wish to add off sales to that, more than
thank you. And yeah, I understand the point. Sarah, is that necessary to add that in?
I don't think it's strictly necessary, if I'm honest, but if you're willing to offer it, then for clarification, it makes it clear.
I think it'd be a matter for the committee chair if you want that.
It may provide clarification as we're going into the detail. We may as well add it in if you wish to. It's your choice. A question from Councillor Ackroyd, please.
It's really a question for Sarah. Wouldn't you also then have to put in, again, the previous bit you put, unless people were delivering on there? Because if it says no persons must be permitted to remove open vessels, wouldn't that also apply? Wouldn't you just have to reiterate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you would. I would.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the conditions that you offered relating to music, Sarah's explained the legal position behind it. But in your opening address, you offered or suggested that you may offer the condition to not have live music on the premises. Is that something that you wish to have in your schedule?
Yes, we have said in the submissions that went forward last week, no live music on the premises. Not looking to do that. And if, to clarify that, Chair, if in the future the premises did wish to hold some kind of an event they were looking, for example, the plans, as I understand it, was for a kind of an opening event, maybe to have a little bit of a jazz band for the opening ceremony a bit in the afternoon one particular day. If that in the future was to be the case, then a temporary event would be applied for, and it would be a matter for yourselves whether you agreed to it or not.
Okay, thank you. So that's noted by the committee. Okay, I think we'll hear from Mr. Backhouse now. Thank you for coming, and please address the committee.
Thank you. I'm a resident of West Aldgate Tower. But I'm actually here to represent the West Aldgate Tower Residents Association. It's 14 of us. And the premises overlooks the site we're talking about. Our concerns, which hopefully from the revision, some of the premises licence applicant submissions that have been resubmitted, I think some of our concerns have been addressed. But let me just backtrack a little bit and say, when we saw the licence application, we were particularly concerned about live music, DJ music, and corporate and private events. As a group and individuals, we're really pleased that the building is now being used properly, because it's been redundant for 2 or 3 years. So we're pleased about the restaurant, but what we're concerned about is protecting ourselves from live music, loud live music, live DJ music, and what could happen is corporate and private events which could spill a little bit out of control as we look down on the premises. The premises has got a glass roof, so we don't believe that it's particularly well protected for sound insulation, and that's why we raised the objection. We're also concerned about late night, and that seems to be pulled back to 11 o'clock at night, so we're comfortable with that. But where our concerns still lie, and I'd like a little bit more confirmation to be able to take back to my co-residents, that the applicant is actually not going to feature DJ music. Any live music has to be subject to coming back to individual licence applications, and our concern about whether corporate and private events will be allowed in the future. Because we don't believe the location of the premises in relation to where we are and the construction of the premises will, we think it will affect our residential community.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I'll turn to the applicant to address that directly and with the confirmations that have been asked for.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, along with what I've said about live music, if DJ music in the future was requested for whatever reason, it would need to be under the guise of a temporary event that would need to come back to be submitted correctly to the council, and it would be determined obviously by yourselves and the police and environmental health. It's our intention to ensure that the current licence we're discussing this morning, should it be granted, would not permit the use of live or recorded music on the premises. Happy to have that condition on the actual licence to say it cannot take place. A 10 would be an individual event that would be considered by the committee. I think that was a question you had.
Excuse me, can I just pop in there, because you put that as a condition on the licence that there's no live or recorded music. Unfortunately, because of the Live Music Act, you can't actually condition that. So, live and amplified music and recorded music between 8 and 11, there can be no conditions that attach.
Once again, so I'm in agreement with you. I was just trying to offer as much comfort as possible. If it cannot be conditioned, all I can say is it will not happen. There's nothing more we can say. But if you cannot put it on the licence, then very little more I can offer this morning.
Okay, I understand we can put it in the licence as a condition, only it may not be enforceable.
May not be enforceable,
if
yeah.
you're willing to offer that and subsequently offer live music to your customers, clearly it won't be a good look for the business, but it won't be enforceable.
Correct, Chair. There are, and I don't have the exact acts and laws, but there are under noise nuisance measures that could be taken against the business outside of licensing. It doesn't need to all be enforced through the licence. There are other measures that could be taken against the business should they do such a thing and cause a nuisance through night.
Yes, indeed. As always, we have powers here to review any licence. Okay. Mr. Backhouse, would you like to ask any further questions or address the committee?
Well, I didn't get any clarification on the corporate and private events intention from the applicant?
Once again, it would follow, I would imagine this would fall under what we've just spoken about in terms of live and recorded music. It's not something I believe you can condition because it's not a license, but it would fall under the same guise as what we've just discussed. If the premises was to have corporate events taking place and the noise was unacceptable, there would be measures that could be taken, and as you say, the review process is open, as are the other enforcements through nuisance.
Okay, thank you. So, for the benefit of Mr. Backhouse, are you confirming that there's no intention to have the corporate events, or are you saying that there may be potential for corporate events in the future?
We're saying there's no intention to have corporate events.
Okay, thank you. And you're happy to have that in your as a condition or a part of your schedule?
We are indeed, if it can be conditioned.
Okay, thank you. I believe we can put it in.
Yeah, because I mean that covers the kind of gathering as well, doesn't it? Not just the music element.
Yes, that may provide some comfort to the objector, even though it may not be legally enforceable. Okay, Mr. Backhouse, is there anything further you'd like to say?
No, I'm satisfied, and I'm happy that there's some changes to the way the business is going to be run. So we're satisfied.
Okay, thank you. So, on that basis, are you withdrawing your objection following what you've heard today?
Based on the communication I've heard today and how much of that can be documented and how much of that can be legally enforced, yes.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, what's the process from this point, please?
Well, because you're withdrawing your objection, but based on the conditions, I wouldn't say that that's actually withdrawal because you want those conditions putting in, so I think we
So
proceed.
we still have to make a determination?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Gibson, would you like to, or Mr. Santos, would you like to address the committee before we make our determination?
Very briefly, Chair, thank you for the opportunity. As I said, a very small business. It's clear from the application and the amendments made prior to today and what we've put forward before you today, the applicant is looking to work with the community, he's not looking to cause a problem, and he's looking to fit in with the general area, not forgetting he owns a business directly opposite, so there's no way he's going to create a problem right opposite his existing business. So I think you can have comfort that this will be a well-run business as described in the application. It will be a very low-key, laid-back event, which will be very enjoyable for those who visit, and I would ask that you grant the amended application.
Okay, thank you. And actually, last chance for councillors. Okay, thank you very much.
I've still got some areas to tidy up if that's okay with you.
Yes,
Thank you. Apologies for this, I know it seems a bit long-winded, but I just need to clarify what's in the operating schedule. So just looking at the first one, all four licensing objectives together, based on what you've said, you intend that everybody will be seated within that restaurant area. It's got seating must be provided for all customers, but perhaps that's not quite the same as saying that customers will be required to be seated at all times.
Customers will be required to be seated at all times. It's not a venue where you could have vertical drinking or anything stood up, and nobody can drink without food anyway. So what you've therefore got is somebody standing with a buffet in one hand and a glass in the other, and it ain't going to work. So everyone must be seated.
Yeah, thank you. So alcohol will only be served as ancillary to food. Would you have any objections to something like alcohol? Alcohol will only be served with a food order, just to make it really clear.
That's fine.
Okay. Just moving on, right down to the bottom. All bottles and glasses must be removed from the public areas as soon as they are either finished with or empty. Could you just clarify for the committee what those public areas would be? Would they be communal courtyard areas?
Be the licensable area of the business. It is basically that somebody gets up and leaves and the tables are not left uncleared for half an hour or something. Everything's cleared away straight away after somebody leaves.
Okay, so are you happy for me just to clarify that within there? Okay, and that they would be removed by staff? I mean, again, just clarification. I think we've actually covered everything there. And yeah, simply to confirm, you said that you've got no intention, and it's been offered as a condition that there wouldn't be any corporate functions. Would that also be kind of private hire as as well?
Any kind of function.
Any, right, okay. And just to doubly clarify, no vertical drinking would be taking place.
No vertical drinking.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll ask members of the public, applicants and the press to leave for a few moments. We'll make our determination and ask you to come back. I would think if we come back at 11:15, please. You can start. just reintroduced. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to Norwich City Council Licensing Subcommittee, Wednesday, 24th of November 2021. We are determining the application for grant of a premises licence at Gober Farmers, Orford Yard in Norwich. And the committee has reached its decision, and that is to grant the licence as applied for and as amended, and with the conditions as offered, with no further conditions attached. There is a right of appeal within 21 days, I should remind members of the public, and Mr. Backhouse in particular, that there is a process for appeal. So if this doesn't work out, or that there are other issues, please get in touch with the licensing team. Other than that, thank you very much for coming, and that is the end of the meeting.